14. 2:15 a.m., Sunday, June 21st. Riley leaned heavily on Nick as he helped her limp back to the couch. She wheezed out a sigh when he gently lowered her back onto the cushion. Everything hurt. Her shoulder, her hip, both knees, her forehead, a wrist, a bicep, her entire ass. The EMT reported that she didn't appear to have broken anything, but that she still needed a head-to-toe going over. Riley felt like she'd caught the flu, got hit by a city bus, and then was tossed in an industrial dryer with a load of bowling balls. Nick crammed himself onto the couch next to her and slung a protective arm around her. Giving in to the exhaustion, she sagged into his side and rested her head against him. Here she could focus on the low hum of relief that came from touching him. He was solid and warm, and a very nice place to rest her weary, bloody head. "So, someone finally offed the old sleaze bag," Mrs. Penny mused behind them. She'd picked up a stack of Riley's unopened mail and was thumbing through it. Riley was too tired to protest. "Can't say I'm surprised," Fred said from the floor where he sat pretzel-legged. "I remember 6 years ago when I was bringing in the groceries and that noodle-nosed bran muffin didn't even hold the door for me," Lily huffed. "Nope. He just let it shut right in my face, and me with an armful of bags." Lily was one of the sweetest human beings on the face of the earth, but she also had a reputation for holding grudges. Failed to hold a door for her when she was having a bad day, and she wouldn't cry at your funeral. "You got anything to eat around here?" Mr. Willicott barked at Sergeant Jones as if it were her place. "There's eggs in the fridge," Riley called out weakly. Mrs. Penny held up an envelope with a law firm logo on it to the ceiling light and squinted. "I'll take that, Mrs. Penny," Riley said, holding out her good hand. Disappointed, her neighbor handed it over, and Riley stuffed it between the couch cushions. Nick quirked a sexy eyebrow, but she pretended not to notice. She was physically injured and emotionally scarred, gosh darn it. All these nosy busybodies could suck it. "I need more plates," Mr. Willicott yelled from the kitchenette, where something was sizzling away on the stovetop. "Go across the hall," Lily suggested. "There's probably brains and blood all over the place," Mrs. Penny reminded them. Riley squeezed her eyes shut and tried not to think about blood and brains. Another vision had come true, and despite everything she'd done, Dickie had still ended up dead. It was a lose-lose as far as she was concerned. "I don't know if Dickie owned dishes anyway. We can improvise," Fred said, untying his legs and rising from the floor. His shorts were entirely too short, Riley noted, in a detached, slipping into a pain coma kind of way. "Miss Thorn, I need to ask you a few questions." The handsome detective was back. So was the very insistent muscle twitching just beneath Nick's left eye. A person didn't have to be actually psychic to pick up on the fact that Nick hated Detective Weber, or that the feeling was mutual. "Riley already gave her statement to a uniform," Nick snarled. "Here you go, sweetie." Lily pushed a coffee mug of scrambled eggs into Riley's good hand. Surprised to find that she was in fact hungry, Riley wedged the mug between her knees so she could eat with her left hand. The detective sat down on the coffee table facing her and flipped his notebook to a blank page. "Be that as it may, she left out the fact that she went to the station on Walnut Street 2 days ago and reported that one Dickie Frick was in danger." "Well, hell. How did you—" Riley's question was cut off. "Surveillance footage and your license plate," the detective said. "Real nice, copper," Mrs. Penny sniffed. "Good enough to search a license plate, but can't be bothered to save a man's life with advance notice. Another 5-star day for the Harrisburg PD." Detective Weber ignored the jibe. "Is this your handwriting, Miss Thorn?" Detective Weber held up a piece of paper that had been smoothed out and stuffed in an evidence bag. "Shit. Riley dropped her fork. Nick leaned forward, his eyes skimming the note. "We found it crumpled up in the hallway," the detective announced. This entire situation was getting stupider by the second. An idiot was dead because he ignored the warning that should have saved his life. She was being questioned by the cop she went to for help. Her nose twitched. Uh-oh. And now it was getting harder to focus on what the detective was saying because there was a very insistent dead father figure who kept nudging at her consciousness. "Tie clip, tell him." What was it about dead people that made them so pushy? Riley shook her head, trying to dislodge the ghost. "I'm sorry. What were you saying, Detective?" she asked. "I was asking you how exactly you knew Frick was in trouble. Were you in a relationship with him?" The other occupants of her apartment started laughing, then wheezing. "Our Riley dates men like Hot Nick here," Lily announced with an appreciative gleam in her eyes. "Or that ex-husband of hers. I mean, the guy's a tool, but a hot one," Mrs. Penny said, fanning herself with an old credit card statement she'd liberated from Riley's plastic bill bin. "Tie clip!" "Give me a minute, will you?" she muttered under her breath in exasperation. The last time she listened to her psychic urges, it hadn't gone exactly to plan. "Ms. Thorn, I'm going to need you to tell me exactly how you knew your neighbor was in danger now, not in a minute. Do you know who did this?" Detective Weber was very, very serious now. "Tie clip." This is what she got for trying to do the right thing. A dead guy poking at her and a live detective ready to slap cuffs on her. "I had a feeling," she said, choking out the words. "A feeling," Detective Weber repeated. "A feeling made you call the tip line 8 hours ago and disguise your voice like Cookie Monster." So much for the anonymous part of the anonymous tip line. That was not Cookie Monster, Riley argued. It had been her best impression of Mr. Willicott. "Thorn," Nick said quietly, shaking his head. Her fake boyfriend was telling her to, for real, shut up. "Are you interfering with my investigation?" Weber asked Nick. "Listen, genius," Nick snapped. "Why in the hell would she warn you about a murder if she was going to commit it?" "People do all kinds of crazy things," Weber said. "I'd think you'd remember that." Ugh. She was exhausted, pissed off, sore from head to toe, and the last thing she needed was a pissing contest in her apartment. "I didn't kill Dickie. I don't know who did," Riley cut in. "Sometimes I just know things." Heat flushed her cheeks. There was no reaction from either man. She rolled her eyes, which made her headache worse. "Like before they happen. Or I know things that I shouldn't know." God, this was humiliating. "She's a psychic, dear," Lily said helpfully, popping up over the back of the couch. She was eating eggs out of a soup bowl. "A psychic?" the detective repeated. "I don't identify as a psychic," Riley said quickly. "Her whole family is psychic," Lily insisted. "I'm not psychic, officially," Riley said lamely. "I just sometimes know things, like about Dickie, and that the tie clip your dad gave you fell between your washer and dryer." The detective's face went stone still. "Okay, that's enough," Nick decided, standing. He gently pulled her to her feet. "I'm taking her to the hospital. If you have any more questions, ask them with a lawyer present." The detective stood too. "Make sure you get me that dashcam footage if you don't want to be spending the night in jail, Santiago," Nick responded with a middle finger over his shoulder. They left her neighbors in her apartment. It was a slow, painful 2 flights of stairs. Riley refused to wuss out and use the lift chair, but they managed to eventually make it to the parking lot. Nick helped her into his SUV. They were both quiet as he pulled out of the lot, leaving the flash of red and blue lights in the rearview mirror. "You want to talk about the whole psychic thing?" he asked, finally. She didn't bother opening her eyes when she shook her head. "Nope. You want to tell me why you and the detective hate each other's guts? Nope.